Hey guys, do you have certain perceptions on what you're gonna find in the Philippines? Or maybe you've been here and things are better than you thought. Maybe they're different than you thought, but we're gonna go through what I found in several months here, what I would call 3 different realities of dating Filipino girls, Filipino women. And I'm doing it, I'm gonna give you 3 different perspectives on it. We're gonna come to the end. I think the third one's it's a bit nuanced, but it's a bit surprising, but I think it's really good for you to know. And it's even interesting to know. It's a lot of this stuff is so new to me, just with the culture, because I've been here close to 3 months. So it's all new. It's definitely different than other places in Southeast Asia. And just to give you a little context, I'm gonna give you my experience and what I think of it at this point, at this juncture. But I'm gonna also give you a perspective I've gotten from a couple of friends. One guy, his name's Frank, but he had been in the Philippines for a year, and then I met him actually in Vietnam, in Da Nang. I was there for several months. He had come over maybe a couple of weeks. We happened to meet, played some tennis, got to know each other pretty well. But coming from the Philippines, he was really on cloud 9 with the Philippines. I mean, he loved his experience there. And being in Da Nang, now obviously when you get to a place, you got to give it a little time to sort of to settle in. But he had been in Da Nang and he was really disappointed in the beginning because it is different, and it's a whole different, I think a different adjustment, and also more of a cultural divide. I would say it's just more difficult to sort of break in, especially with the local women, which is the huge difference, I think. But he had gotten a bit disillusioned over a couple of months that I was there and knew him, and was planning to head back to the Philippines. In fact, I think he's coming back in the next couple of weeks. Just heard from him not long ago. So there's Frank, but he's a guy who's in his early 40s, really great looking guy. I mean, really in great shape. And I could see him having no problem really anywhere, I would think, getting a date with a girl. I don't think it'd be any problem for him. So I'm gonna sort of give you context on him. And then there's another younger guy I know by the name of David. He's around 30, and he's got a whole different experience. He's using the dating apps a lot. He's on Tinder, Bumble, and just has them on rapid fire, rinse, repeat, and just continually. And so I think they're really kind of going in different directions, 2 different ways that they're doing it, and we'll kind of compare. But I would call myself, I'm an older guy, I would definitely say, but I'm not quite old guy yet. I'm hanging on to older as long as I can. I'm in my 50s, but I'm not exactly out there roaming the streets at night. I'm not in heat, especially like a guy like David is. I'm cool with being in my 50s and kind of taking it at a more leisurely pace. And I'm coming off the heels of actually being with the girl for almost a year. And so with that involved too, I'm just a little more relaxed and sort of take it or leave it at this point. But I'll say when I've been other points in my life, when I've been in that sort of situation, that sort of mindset, take it or leave it, seems like that mindset a lot of times would attract. But now I'm doing it, I'm pretty much just left alone for the most part. I'll get into that, but that's kind of my different perspectives. And I'll say, just to give you more context, when I was back in the States prior to getting out of the States, going to Southeast Asia, and I had my own wellness biohacking center. And a lot of the motivation in doing that, and I've always had the same motivation, is try to really feel like I want to do everything I can, experiment any way I can to sort of keep myself feeling good, is really at the end of the day, that's the goal. I don't necessarily want to live a long time. I'm not necessarily worried about longevity as much. I just want to feel good doing whatever I'm doing. Feel good doing it. And I'm feeling really good right now. But when I was in the States, I was in San Diego, and I had all this top shelf, the finest equipment you can get, that covering any sort of angle with therapy, with wellness, with biohacking. I mean, it was biohacking equipment. But I'd gotten pretty fat there in San Diego. Actually, I'd had the clinic about 5 years, and I was working quite a bit, but I've always worked out every day. I was working out every day there with some of the most cutting edge equipment. I was working on ARX machines, if you know about those, or Carol bikes. They're shorter workouts, they're efficient, but they're really sort of scientifically studied to give you the best bang for your buck, so to speak, time-wise. But I was doing the best I could to stay in shape, but I was getting fat there in the US. I was trying to eat the best I could, always try to eat well, but I was bumping up to 18% body fat, maybe even higher. I had a machine that actually measured the body fat. I got scared to be on the body fat machine because I was afraid what it was going to read. But as I got away from San Diego and finally got out of the States, then things started kind of getting better. I got to Bali and I really started getting, I think, in better shape. The gym culture is really outstanding there. There's different gyms, a lot of different gym experiences, and the food, you can find really healthy food there. And I'm going to do a whole video actually on Bali. I'm going to give it a vitality score like I've done for Thailand and for Albania. But for Bali, the beaches aren't so great there actually in Bali, especially around, I was mainly in Canggu for the most part. A little bit Uluwatu, a little bit Sanur. Got into better shape. There's a picture right here I'll show you. But at that point, I was probably getting down to, I think I was about 13% body fat at this point. For me, the reference point's always been really the intercostals. If I can see the intercostals, then I feel like I'm in pretty good shape there, pretty good condition. I know I think I've probably been around 10%. I mean, I can see the intercostals clearly. But I got in a situation where I really started to fear the man boob. And I mean, I'm still deathly afraid of that man boob. And I'm gonna do a whole video on man boobs. And take a look, because I was really worried I was gonna end up like Frank Costanza. Check him out. Yeah,
let me change my shirt.
That's a scary, scary situation, scary thought. And then Frank had to, Kramer like the bro, and Frank like the man's-ear, and they could never figure out what to do with Frank's boobs there, or what to call it, or I don't think it ever came up with the device there with the guy, the bra salesman. I forget his name, but anyway. But yeah, so I've really been after these, trying to keep the man boobs away. And when I was in San Diego, I started to see the man boobs starting to form. I don't want to end up looking like a Chuck Schumer or a Phil Mickelson before he had the surgery done. So I'm really worried about these man boobs, because it's not only unsightly, but it's also, there's a snowball effect with those man boobs, especially the fat that can accumulate right under your chest there. It's a very lymphatic fat, but it can snowball and cascade into and morph into what becomes actually new growth of glandular tissue right there in the nipple. It can literally turn into an actual boob that becomes an actual endocrine organ. So you're working against yourself. So you get to the point where because all fat is producing aromatase, which aromatizes testosterone into estrogen. So as you get more fat on, all over your body, but especially in the chest, you're aromatizing more and more, you're becoming more estrogen dominant. And as kind of an aside, years ago I used to sell to urologists, and back then they had the idea, which still seems wild, and many of them still hold this theory, that the prostate cancer is driven by testosterone. And some urologists are coming around, they're seeing in their new studies out that it's not that, it's starting to see when estrogen becomes dominant, it sort of crosses over testosterone dominance within the body. That's when you get really at risk for all sorts of diseases, maladies, prostate cancer being one of them, other even epithelial cancers. So it's a real risk factor as well, if you really let it progress. But I think, like I said, they even found out that giving sometimes prostate cancer patients, maybe they're on what they call watchful waiting, where they're giving them, in the past, they would give them some sort of drug that would knock out all the hormones. I actually was very familiar with those drugs, used to sell one of those drugs that would knock out part of what they call a testosterone blockade, where they would give a couple of drugs that completely knocked out a guy's testosterone production, all of it. And the idea being maybe it gives you a few months of extra survival, but in the meantime, your quality of life goes right down the tubes. I mean, you've got nothing in the tank, and certainly you're not active sexually at all. I mean, it's a bad state to be, but that's been the common practice. Almost reminds me of the AMA endorsing smoking in the 50s. It's that kind of, I don't want to call it malpractice by any means, but it's just, I think it's a wrong mindset, a wrong outlook on testosterone, the role of testosterone. Anyway, I'm getting way off on a tangent here, but I'm saying all to say that I got deathly scared when I got fat, and that was one of the reasons I got out of the States, and then getting this channel going, I really would just want to communicate everything I know that I've come across. I'm constantly researching, learning. I want to pass that on, but this is all about being as healthy as you can be and finding the best spot to be as healthy as you can be. That's the aim of the channel. And I'm sharing all these different places I've been in Southeast Asia, but the Philippines, what I'm saying here is it's really excellent. I think I've noticed in the almost 3 months I've been here, I've really just my own anecdotal information, I've gotten much leaner. I think I'm down around that, maybe getting close to 10%. But the intercostals are more in play. I'm seeing those guys. So in a roundabout way, I'm getting to what I want to get to with the dating. But I'm just giving you some context. Time also with the wellness clinic, biohacking clinic, I kind of realized using even a machine that I really liked a lot. It's called pulse electromagnetic field device, but it's a PMF it's called. But it just sort of really attempts to mimic what you get in nature. We get nature with grounding, with even being around the equator, that extra magnetism. But you can get on that machine every day and it's just not going to give you what you get out here in nature. In the Philippines, the beaches are great. If you can get to, you don't always, the white sand beaches are a little tougher. They're on the islands, of course, but I'm near Cebu. I'm on an island called Lapu-Lapu, and I have access to white sand beach, which is great, but it's not always easily accessible unless you get out on the islands. But being here, I think it's really made a huge difference, and it's really helped me lean up even further. So I'm really convinced the Philippines is a prime spot just for health reasons alone. But also there's the mental health that's very much involved, and that's where we're getting to with today's video, is the dating, and again, the three realities as I drone on and on. But the number one reality I want to get to, and I circling back to Frank, is when he came over there and he gave me such a glowing review of the Philippines, it had sort of lined up with other reviews I'd heard from other guys in the past. I knew a guy back in the States, he was a tennis coach. He would come over to the Philippines for a couple of months at a time, and he would come back saying, man, it's like you're a movie star over there. I mean, they really value the westernized guy, maybe it's a lot of curiosity, but there's something in the way they value. They don't really, the age gap thing is different. They have a different perspective on it, and it's still the case here in that regard to a large degree. But so all these, Frank's assessment and the other guys I'd heard just kind of gave me this feeling that when you get over here in the Philippines, you're gonna have to start beating the girls off of the bat. I mean, you're gonna have to arm yourself, beat them off of the stick all the time. But so it kind of gives you what I call this white horse syndrome, where you feel you're gonna ride into town on your white horse, your cowboy hat on, your white horse, and you're gonna be the king of the avenue, so to speak. You're gonna that white horse. You're gonna just look so good to these girls, and that's what I'm gonna dispel. What the first reality is, and maybe it's changed a lot. I've heard it has changed slowly over the years, but there's really no white horse anymore. You're coming in here, and I'm not saying at times, maybe 10 to 15% of the time, you get that sort of sense that maybe there is curiosity there and they do value Western guy to some degree. Maybe they give you more attention, or you get that feeling some, but maybe an equal amount of time you get a feeling that maybe you're even less, because you're still around. English is the widely spoken language, but a lot of time you can be in situations where they're speaking in Tagalog or Bayasa, I think the other language they use a lot is, and you don't know what's going on. You feel you can feel left out and feel marginalized, if that's the right word to use. But so that's possible as well. It can happen to some degree, especially you go to places that are more really raw Filipino, where you're the only guy with a white face around, and you can feel. But I mean, the Filipino people are always super nice, but you don't feel like you're some sort of extra special person. You feel like just a normal guy walking around. And I'll add a little context in that when I first got here, funny enough, now when I first got here, I was more in Cebu City we're in the Cebu bubble, the IT park, business park area. A lot of big malls over there. They had a couple of big Ayala malls there's another big seaside mall, I think has 700 stores in. They're huge. They really get into their malls. And when I was over there, I was maybe in the mall a little bit more, and I did get approached maybe a couple of times by girls, which was, that felt different. That was unique. I hadn't been approached maybe in that way, and it wasn't anything. It was subtle. It was nice, and they're always really nice. But and I did end up seeing one of the girls that approached, and I'll explain that in a bit. Only went out with her one time, but other than that, I've really only been out with another girl a couple of times, and that was more organic, just sort of a meeting that was where it wasn't necessarily anyone approaching there. It didn't seem as if we just sort of met in a sort of mixed situation, but yeah, I did. actually experienced that, and it did feel different. I didn't certainly get that throughout the rest of Southeast Asia. As I mentioned with Frank in Vietnam, I don't think that would ever happen. You have to jump through some hoops, really, to, I think, to be able to get a woman there in Vietnam a bit more. And obviously Bali is a different thing, and all these different places are very different. Japan, very different in that regard, maybe even more closed off than Vietnam, I would say so. But yeah, in the Philippines, I think it is easier in general just to talk to people. Everyone is so fun-loving. I think the best 3 people I've encountered are probably the Filipino people are number 1, then the Bali people are probably 2, and then the Thai people are right there at number 3. But all of them are very easy to talk to, and they have a good sense of humor, and they like to mix it up, like to chat it up. So that's always going to be available if you want to go in that direction, just talk to a lot of people and be social. I think that's very easy. But as far as the girls, it gets a bit more nuanced and a bit tricky at times. I'm going to get into the ways in which it gets tricky, and you have to be, as other girls will tell you, you got to be a little bit careful with the girls. But don't think you're coming in here that you're going to be some special item. I don't think so. Unless you're in the greatest shape and you got no problem being anywhere, that's always going to translate, and it'll translate here as well, like I mentioned with Frank. But the other buddy, David, who's on the dating apps a lot, I think he has no problem. He's an English guy, but yeah, it's going to be different for you. It's not going to live up maybe to what you heard, but it has to be a little bit dependent on the location as well. I did spend a little time in Manila. I did notice Manila's really easy to talk to people as well. At some point I might like to get to Manila, but in Manila, in the BGC area, you don't have access to some of the things you have access to here in Cebu, especially Lapu-Lapu. So I would dispel with that white horse sort of theory, that notion when you come in. That's the main bottom line, is just come in as a guy. Don't reek of any, I would say, over-eagerness, because the girls it's gonna be very much like girls anywhere, but I think you're gonna have just better access, and there are gonna be more girls around. You got better opportunities to talk. And then number 2, what they call, there's a term for it, it's called filial piety. It's a fancy way of saying that a lot of girls here, and this ties into the next point I'm going to make, but a lot of girls, they end up having to take care of the rest of their family in a lot of situations. I've run into a couple of girls. The girl I mentioned that I first met that approached me, I kind of got just scared. I got a bit of a red light there when she already started leaning into the fact that she has this obligation, that she has all these bills to pay, and she has this obligation, she has things to take care of, that she can't be reckless, she can't spend, that in many ways she's sort of nudging me. And they're very also subtle in doing this when they have maybe this sort of aim with you, is they tell you to be afraid of the other girls, that the other girls are going to do this to you. They say, be careful. But in a lot of ways, they're just sort of breaking down your barriers in terms of thinking, well, okay, maybe she's not this way if she's advising me not to look out for these type of girls. But yeah, I got the early sense, and pretty strong sense, that she was sort of looking for a sponsor, that that we need somebody to come in here and help with the bills. And it's probably not the best idea for them to share that up front, but I don't know, I think there is a lot of desperation. I mean, in the country, there's the average wage for a worker is $380 per month. That's the average. And then you get out in the provinces, they're making anywhere around $170 to $220 a month, I believe. And then you get in some other numbers. I think if you work at a call center, you can make anywhere from $300 to $600 a month. So that's bigger money. Those jobs are highly sought after, highly coveted jobs. And then really the remote people can possibly make a bit more than $700, maybe $750 a month. So things are tight. It can add up quickly, obviously, as you know. But so the girls, in a lot of cases, I've run across a couple of guys that if they start to like a girl, they want to take her to some island for a few days, it ends up being where they kind of put them on the payroll. You got to look out for the payroll situation where they feel like they want to pay for a girl, and it sort of snowballs, but they initially start paying for a girl to take time off from her job to be with that person. So I knew a guy actually that would pay for 3 days at a time for the girl to take off. They would go wherever they're going to go, to another island somewhere, maybe Bohol or Siargao or Siquijor. That's just an extra bill. And for him, it was at that one point, he thought it was perfectly, and you can certainly see the girl's vantage point. You can see yeah, she's very tight on money. She can't take off, and they work a ton here. They work 6 days a week in most cases, sometimes 7. And another girl that got to know a little bit, I've been out with just a couple of times, but she's working 6 days a week, and she works at an aesthetic clinic. So you would think it would be normal sort of clinic hours, 9 to 5, your evening, but she's there till most nights 9, 10 o'clock. So they really work a lot of hours for not a lot of pay. And in her case, it was interesting because she even, in the beginning, as I said, you see a lot of guys there's no age gap issue here. You see a lot of older guys. I mean, old guys, I should say. Guys really, maybe late 70s, 80, but pretty old guys. I think once you're in the 70s, I can probably safe to put you in the old category. But you see them walking around with girls holding hands that don't look a day over 30, maybe in their 20s. So you know there's some filial piety going on. That man may not be just supporting that girl, but he could be supporting a whole family, could be a whole neighborhood, who knows? Because this one guy that told me about, he started paying for time off, and then other things started coming up. Her sister might need something, or could be someone else in the family needs something. It's not much, and it just adds up, and it just keeps running. It's never a big amount, as he would say. I haven't actually talked to him in the last few weeks, but I don't know if he's still on that train, on that merry-go-round. But I got a feeling he's going to have to get off that merry-go-round at some point, or he's going to be in for maybe more than he bargained for. But that brings us to something else that's actually a big issue in all of the Philippines. Then another thing I've heard about guys hiring maids from out in the provinces, put Facebook ads, put ads out there, circulate them around, and get a girl in from the province, and you can have her come in and work as a maid for a week. So that's what I've heard guys have resorted to. It's a bit of a hack. You bring the girl in, you sort of get an up-close look at her, get to know her a bit, get to talk to her, figure out in a week's time if you think there's anything there to pursue. But it's another idea I've heard about. Guys are getting a little bit inventive here, a little bit creative. But maybe it'll spread. Maybe it'll become a whole new genre, a whole new way of dating here. But it brings us to the third issue, and I think it's interesting on a broad scale, but it also has impact. I think it impacts everything, but it impacts really dating, I think. But it's the whole, what they call a divorce trap for women. As of right now, I think this is the only country, along with, if you consider Vatican City a country, the only countries that essentially outlaw divorce. And here, a divorce is possible, and annulment is possible only, but you have to prove some sort of psychological incapacity, and it takes being in court for up to a year, and then it could cost. In many cases, the guy, he ghosts the girl, the wife, and he's gone. He's out of the picture completely. The wife's left with this legal binding agreement she has with her husband, but to get out of it, she ends up. The cost is anywhere from $2,500, I've heard up to $8,500 to process this annulment. So really outrageous for someone making on average, say, $380 a month. Warped and had rippling effects through the culture for a number of years. I think it's manifesting in a lot of ways now. I did a video that you ought to watch. Actually, one of my first videos called the NBSB movement or phenomenon among women, but it means no boyfriend since birth. And a lot of women take that outlook that women have been so burned and so caught in these negative situations, and so many kids they've grown up, they think about a third of kids grow up with no father here because the father, in a lot of cases, ghosts the marriage. But it's created such a ripple effect that it does affect the girls, their attitudes. I think even probably makes them obviously more jaded and puts up a bit of a wall maybe if you want to get more serious with a girl, but I think you have to think twice. I mean, if you get married in the Philippines, you're going to be really locked in here. Now, the foreign man, obviously in a lot of cases, a foreigner, he'll just leave as well. He just leaves the country and leaves the girl here. That's happened in a lot of cases. It's not just Filipino men leaving, it's also a lot of expats, a lot of foreign men have done the same. So it's created a bit of a wariness among girls. They don't want to feel like they get in a situation but it's kind of a double-edged sword, because a lot of the girls you run into that are in the province that are even in the city that are so strapped financially, they're looking for that man to come in, not only put them on the payroll, but put them on the bank statements, put them on the deeds. And that's another aspect of it as well, that if you were to marry someone in the Philippines, she has so much power within that relationship, because if a business exists and operates, it must be in her name in the Philippines, or a home must be in her name. So a lot of things to consider, and a lot of things to be wary of, a lot of realities here. And then another thing that's kind of interesting that I've run into a bit is skin lightening I think it's maybe less of a thing. It's becoming less of a thing than it has been traditionally, but it's still they think a lot of women base it on the rest of maybe Asian culture, the Japanese, the Koreans, because there's a big Korean population here and they're quite light skinned, but you see the lightening stuff everywhere. There are lightening clinics, there are lightening all through the grocery store. They use this substance called kojic acid or papaya extract or niaminoside. And I guess a healthy way to do it, I talked with a girl just the other day, but she's a darker Filipino girl, but she goes and gets these glutathione IVs that it can help lighten the skin. And it's also, obviously, it's your body's #1 antioxidant made by your liver, so it's a very healthy thing to do, but she's kind of hoping to get a double benefit there. But that's another just aspect of difference in Filipino culture. But I think they place a lot of pressure and sort of class among themselves as to who's lighter, who's darker. But I think that's changing a lot from what I've talked with this girl, especially who's dark. She's very comfortable being darker. She's not necessarily doing the glutathione as a desperate attempt. I mean, no one's trying to. There are a lot of girls here that aren't trying to be Michael Jackson or Sammy Sosa. They're just, maybe they want to be a shade or two lighter. And you see it among the men too. You see them, a lot of cases, they'll have this stuff rubbed on their faces. It looks really white, but one guy told me it's not sunscreen, it's some of this lightening agent. So anyway, that's another thing to consider. So those are really the realities. I hope that can shed some light on things. I think overall, it's great in the Philippines, I would say. Overall, I think that, as I said, the people are great. And I think dating it's probably not the fertile ground it was at one time. I think at one time, it sounds as if maybe 5 to 10 years ago, you were sort of shooting fish in a barrel. It was, you were riding in on a white horse, and there were a lot of white horses around, galloping around, just picking up ladies wherever they wish. But these days, I think things are more even keel. I think it's more of probably a normal market, so to speak. But as I said before, the opportunity is greater here, just in terms of the people being so nice, the people being so outgoing and friendly. That automatically creates, I think, more opportunity. So keep that in mind. I think I'll follow up with that in another episode. We're going to get into that man boob episode that's coming up if you're interested. But subscribe into Health Max Abroad. I'm going to be doing a lot more evaluations of the countries coming up. I think I'm going to do Bali next, and then do one on Japan coming up, and one in Vietnam maybe after that. But stay tuned to that, and a lot more great information, obviously, in the shorts, a lot of nutritional information, a lot of just overall physiology, health information. So it's all good stuff, and I'm loving doing it. So please support, and appreciate you watching. Hope you learned something. We'll see you in the next one.